Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today I'm going to be continuing the top 20 song series here on the channel because everybody seems to really be enjoying it. And that said, today I'm going to be counting down my top 20 favorite metal album closers of all time. Personal favorite is important here. This is just a list of my all-time favorite metal album closers, so of course, everyone's list is going to change depending on the person, but for me, these are my all-time favorite metal album closers. And another important note here, I'm only going to be choosing one pick per band, or else 80% of this list will just be Iron Maiden. So with that in mind, let's get started here with my number 20. I'm going to go with the wickedly underrated band, A Pale Horse Named Death, and Die Alone, the album closers to their debut record, And Hell Will Follow Me, from 2011 here. Really underrated are this band. They are really an interesting blend of influences from, Alice in Chains to Typo Negative, and of course, vocalist Sal Abruscato is a really awesome frontman for the band. He's got a really interesting voice, former drummer for Typo. Does a great job here on this record, specifically on Die Alone, the album closer. An epic track, one of my all-time favorites of theirs, and in my opinion, just a perfect way to end this record, right? It's doomy, but I also love the melodies on here. I think the vocal melodies are really cool, and the chorus is a total earworm as well, so a lot of really interesting elements at play here. Again, the band's two main influences are Alice in Chains and Typo Negative, so I definitely recommend you give this song a listen, give this band a chance here. Really underrated, overlooked in my opinion, should be receiving a lot more attention than they do, so definitely recommend you check them out. You will not be disappointed. Coming in at number 20 here, we have Die Alone by A Pale Horse Named Death from their debut studio album, And Hell Will Follow Me, from 2011. Next at number 19, I'm going to go with one of my all-time favorite songs by the German heavy metal legends, Accept, that being Princess of the Dawn from the Restless and Wild record here. And, if Breaker is the album where Accept really found their sound, this is the record where they really got comfortable with it, right? Restless and Wild, a classic album here, closed out with Princess of the Dawn, an iconic track here, a metal essential in my opinion, really powerful vocal delivery by Udo Dirkschneider, also a great song in a live setting as well. Coming in at number 19, we have Princess of the Dawn by Accept from the Restless and Wild record. Just a great way to close out this album, really heavy stuff in my opinion, so great work here by Accept. And if you want to hear more of my thoughts on the Restless and Wild album, on Princess of the Dawn, and the entire Accept catalog, definitely go check out the video I did, ranking in Wild, counting down every Accept studio album from worst to best. I'll leave the link down in the comment section below. I recently did a video talking about some of my all-time favorite rock and metal covers, and at number 1 on that list, spoiler alert, was Johnny Cash's cover of Hurt, originally by Nine Inch Nails, but that is in no way to understate how much I really do enjoy the original by Nine Inch Nails, coming in at number 18 here on the list, from the Downward Spiral record released in 1994. Really awesome vocals here by Trent Reznor. And what I talked about in that video, about the song covers here is how just changing the vocalist can give the song an entirely different perspective and the lyrics a whole different meaning here. But the original by Trent Reznor, the lyrics cut like a knife in my opinion, and again, great delivery here by Trent. He does an awesome job of establishing the atmosphere of this track as well. It's got a really interesting aesthetic to it, so in my opinion, when it comes to some of the best Nine Inch Nails album closers, this has to be at the very top of the list. For me personally, I think Johnny Cash's cover is just a little bit stronger. However, I do really enjoy the original quite a bit. As a matter of fact, it's one of my favorite Nine Inch Nails tracks, coming in at number 18 on the list, from the Downward Spiral. Following that up now with my number 17, we have Gung Ho by Anthrax. This is a part of the Spreading the Disease album, their sophomore record, one of the best sophomore thrash albums of all time as far as I'm concerned. The first with Joey Belladonna on lead vocals with the band here, replacing Neil Turbin on their sophomore release. And Gung Ho, a fantastic closer here, probably the thrashiest song on this record. It's really fast-paced and thrashy, right? Just full pedal to the metal here from beginning to end. Does not let up one bit. The chorus is really energetic as well. If it wasn't an album closer, it could also work really well as an album opener, in my opinion. So, Accept did a great job here of bookending this record with two really awesome fast-paced tracks, that being AIR to open things up, and then Gung Ho to close out the album. But for me personally, Gung Ho, probably my favorite song from this record. Love it to death. Great song here, and an awesome way to close things out, in my opinion, on the record where Anthrax really did come into their own with Joey Belladonna on lead vocals, taking the band to the next level. How could you possibly close out a classic concept album like Abigail by King Diamond? Well, he did it with a 7-minute epic here, that being the Black Horsemen, my number 16 on the list, from the Abigail record from 1987. This is King Diamond's sophomore solo release here, and this whole album is fantastic, furthering a really cool story. You've got some great musicianship as well by the band, and King Diamond's vocals are, really strong here on this record. What else is new? But when it comes to the album closer here, it finishes really strong, wrapping up the story, and the Black Horsemen, an epic track here. I love the guitar work work on this song as well. The lyrics are really cool. Everything just kind of comes together here and makes for a great closer to this really awesome concept record, in my opinion. So with that said, coming in at number 16, we have the Black Horsemen by King Diamond from the Abigail album from 1987. Here's a really underrated pick that not too many people talk about when it comes to the Motorhead catalog, but for my number 15, I'm going to go with We Are Motorhead, the title track to their 2000 record here, kicking off the 21st century with a classic album, in my opinion, one of my favorites from theirs. The whole album is great, but it closes things out here. Track number 10 on this track listing here, We Are Motorhead, the title track. It's essentially a Motorhead theme song, right? It wraps up everything you love about Motorhead, lyrically, all in one track, in my opinion. Some really fun lyrics here, delivered by Lemmy. It's got, the same formulaic approach that Motorhead have had taken to, a majority of their catalog, which, in the sense of Motorhead, is not a bad thing. They're a band that I really don't want to hear anything different from, but We Are Motorhead, a great album closer here, and a killer title track that gets pretty underrated, especially when it comes to some of the band's 21st century works. So with that in mind, my number 15 on the list is We Are Motorhead. Really fun track here, great closer, and an awesome title track as well. Number 14 is going to go to the title track of 1981's Diary of a Madman by Ozzy Osbourne, his sophomore record, and the final with Randy Rhoads on guitar before Rhoads' untimely passing. So this album is, a swan song for Randy Rhoads here, but it closes things out with Diary of a Madman, the title track, which is this really atmospheric track. I love the vibe it gives off, right? Ozzy's vocal delivery here is on point, in my opinion, and of course, Randy Rhoads, one of the all-time best guitarists in metal history, super influential, and shines here on this record, especially on the title track to close out the album. Going out strong here as far as I'm concerned. Diary of a Madman, great track, great vocals, really awesome delivery by Ozzy, and killer soloing throughout by Randy Rhoads. Just awesome stuff here, and it really does personify what made that early period of Ozzy with Randy Rhoads so special. So with that in mind, it's my number 14 on the list, the title track to the Diary of a Madman record from 1981. We're going to stick with Ozzy here and go to Black Sabbath for my number 13 for a pick that, let's be honest, probably wouldn't come to mind first when it comes to some of the best Black Sabbath album closers, but for me, it's one of my all-time favorite Sabbath tracks. That's Dirty Women off the Technical Ecstasy record here, released, this is right before things would really kind of go off the rails for Black Sabbath, right? This is kind of the last really strong album, I think, before the burnout, creative burnout, and frustrations in the band, Ozzy kind of being checked out, would really become an issue, even though at this point you can kind of feel like they were going through a bit of a dry spell in terms of creativity. Tracks like Dirty Women really showed that the spark was still there in some respects, and it's a really great album closer, in my opinion. Some really interesting lyrics here penned by Geezer Butler, also featuring some of my favorite, all-time favorite Tony Iommi guitar solos. So great stuff there. Awesome track, in my opinion, that is pretty underrated considering it's from the Technical Ecstasy record, which just in general tends to be overlooked, I think. But when it comes to lumping that great streak of Sabbath records together, I would, even consider Technical Ecstasy to be part of that as a follow-up here to Sabotage, even though you could definitely sense a little bit of a dip in quality at this point. It's still a really strong album for what it's worth. I think it's full of some really awesome deep cuts, including Dirty Women to close things out, which, like I said, is my favorite Sabbath album closer, which, it was a difficult choice because it competes with some great album closers out there, like, of course, Into the Void, which is probably the first one to come to mind, The Writ as well. So really difficult, but for me personally, I think that Dirty Women is the best Sabbath album closer out there, and a criminally underrated deep cut as well. Number 12 is going to be another deep cut here, this one from Megadeth. I'm going to go with Hook in Mouth, from the pretty overlooked album here, So Far, So Good, So What, their third studio record, which, when it comes to the early Megadeth material, this is the one album that tends to be overlooked, I think, the most, but, I think that it's full of great tracks, including Hook in Mouth. Awesome album closer here, in my opinion, featuring some of Dave Mustaine's best lyrics from the early years of Megadeth, as far as I'm concerned. Really interesting delivery as well, and it's super heavy, it's a great, heavy, thrashy closer to this record, which, again, I said before, it's a bit overlooked, but, with tracks on here like Into the Lungs of Hell, their cover of Anarchy in the UK, which I never understood the hate for, Mary Jane, 502, In My Darkest Hour, Liar, and then Hook in Mouth. The whole record is really strong, but it closes out really, importantly so, with a great closer in Hook in Mouth, the 8th track here on this record. Every song in here is a banger, in my opinion, including Hook in Mouth. Great closer, coming in at number 12 on the list from Megadeth, from the So Far, So Good, So What album. We're going to move now 5 years earlier to the debut, a solo debut, I should say, of Ronnie James Dio in 1983, that being Holy Diver here for my number 11, Shame on the Night. This album closer is fantastic, in my opinion, but I had my pick of great Dio album closers, just a couple off the top of my head: Egypt, The Chains Are On from Last in Line, and the criminally underrated Bring Down the Rain from Strange Highways were two that I was really considering here for this list, but ultimately I can't go against Shame on the Night here. Fantastic song, great closer, got a really haunting laugh here by by Dio. Everyone wants to talk about Ozzy's evil laugh. Dio had a great evil laugh as well, as seen here on this track. Got some great soloing going on by Vivian Campbell. Just shows how great the original lineup here for Dio was. You know, of course, this lineup wouldn't last more than a few records, but Vivian Campbell, Ronnie James Dio, and company doing a great job here on this record, especially on the album closer, Shame on the Night. One of my all-time favorite Dio tracks, and in my opinion, his best album closer as well. So, coming in at number 11 here, we have Shame on the Night from 1983's Holy Diver. We move into the top 10 now. Coming in at number 10, I'm going to go with Steeler by Judas Priest from the British Steel record here. A pure new wave of British heavy metal essential is this entire album, but Steeler, great way to close things out. Features some really killer guitar work here by KK Downing, in my opinion, even though when looking at the studio version compared to, you know, some of the live renditions of this track, it's probably a better song live. However, it closes out British Steel in style, in my opinion. Really heavy stuff, and, you know, this whole album is fantastic in my opinion, but Steeler is a great closer as far as I'm concerned. Some great vocals, as always, by Rob Halford, one of the best metal vocalists of all time, and, of course, again, the guitar work here by KK Downing and Glenn Tipton is top-notch, but KK does a fantastic job here, more, you know, in particular. So, in my opinion, even though it is a great song live, and I do probably prefer it live, the studio version is fantastic as well, and definitely belongs in the top 10, in my opinion. Next, at number 9, I'm going to go with the title track to Blackwater Park by Opeth from 2001 here. This is one of the best Opeth songs of all time, and it closes out a great all-time classic record by them as well. I mean, I just love the really creative riffs here that really does show their range, and a range of creativity, I should say, does the band here on this track. The riffs are fantastic. The drumming by Martin Lopez is great. I love the bass line on here. The vocals are fantastic. It really has all the ingredients for what makes a great Opeth track, in my opinion, and is far and away, as far as I'm concerned at least, the best song on this record. So, of course, Blackwater Park is an essential, a classic, but the title track is, in my opinion, the best on the album. Again, like I said before, it really does feature everything I look for in a classic Opeth song, and really did become the blueprint for what made Opeth so fantastic in the 21st century. So for me, Blackwater Park, fantastic, but when it comes down to it, the title track is the best on the record. Next, to number 8, how could I not go with my third favorite band of all time? That is Alice in Chains. Let's go with Wood here, off the Dirt album from 1992. This is a song that no matter how many times I hear it, I can never get tired of listening to it. That bass intro is fantastic. I love the vocals here by Jerry Cantrell and Lane Staley as well. The lyrics paying tribute to the late Andrew Wood from Mother Love Bone. It's just great stuff here. It closes out a perfect record, in my opinion, in Dirt. Every song in here is great, but Wood, I mean, my God, one of the best grunge songs of all time, in my opinion, and Dirt is, like I've said many times before on the channel, is, in my opinion, the best grunge album of all time. So it works on so many levels here, and again, like I said, I can never get tired of hearing this track. One of my all-time favorites from Alice in Chains, coming in at number 8 here on the list, have to go with Wood from Dirt. This one could be a bit polarizing, but for my number 7, I'm going to go with Outlaw Torn by Metallica from the Load record from 1996. Metallica have a ton of great album closers. They really do. You know, whether it's Metal Militia or Call of Cthulhu, Damage Inc., Dyer's Eve, they have so many great album closers out there. So it was really hard to pick just one, because I am limiting myself to one pick per band. And I'll talk about that a little bit later and how hard it was, especially with Iron Maiden. But with Metallica here, they're my second favorite band of all time. So I definitely did have a hard time choosing just one great album closer here by Metallica. But ultimately, I'm going to go with Outlaw Torn from Load. I mean, when it comes to just a great collection here of elements of blues as well as hard rock here, maybe a little bit of improvisation, progressive, it's all on this track. The lyrics are really cool as well. It's got this sinister kind of a vibe to it. The guitar solo here on this album was actually cut short, right? If you want to hear the full version, it's out there when they do it live, which is just fantastic. An incredible live track. It was great when it was recorded live at the San Francisco Symphony the 2 times they did it. So with that in mind here, I really love Outlaw Torn. I think it features some of Metallica's best lyrics of the Load era, and really does show a lot of musical maturity by the band, how much they come into their own and gotten comfortable with experimenting with different types of sounds here and different types of songs by 1996 and the release of Load. So, while some don't care for the Load era of Metallica, I love its experimentation. I think Outlaw Torn is a great song that really does showcase their musical prowess on a whole different level. So with that in mind, it's my number 8, my number 7 on the list here today. Gotta go with Outlaw Torn from Load. Number 6 is going to go to The Philosopher by Death off the Individual Thought Patterns record here from 1993. And initially for this list, I was going to go with their cover of Painkiller from The Sound of Perseverance, that hidden track. Great cover of Judas Priest. But ultimately here, I'm going to go with The Philosopher. I think the riff on this track is fantastic. The chorus is great. Chuck Schuldiner on lead vocals, tremendous as always. One of the best voices in death metal history, and really did help to write the blueprint for tactical death metal. Individual Thought Patterns, killer album, closed out with The Philosopher, one of Death's all-time best track, one of my favorites from theirs as well. One of the first Death songs I ever heard as well, so provided a great kind of gateway into their catalog. So maybe I'm a little bit partial to this track, but I think it's absolutely killer and super heavy, and a great way to close out Individual Thought Patterns. So with that in mind, my number 6 on the list, The Philosopher by Death. Breaking to the top 5 now, with my number 5, I'm going to go with Keeper of the Seven Keys by Helloween. Of course, Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2 is fantastic from top to bottom, right? And if you want to get technical, the expanded edition of this record did feature a bonus track, track number 10, Save Us, but I'm going to go with the original here, which closes things out with Keeper of the Seven Keys, the title track. An epic song here by the band. This was released during a time where they were operating at a level close or adjacent to what Iron Maiden were doing, as far as I'm concerned, which, again, I've said this before on the channel, but, Maiden are my favorite band, so if I'm saying that, that's extremely high praise for me. Keeper of the Seven Keys, great album closer here. Killer title track as well. Really great progressive power metal track here, in my opinion, featuring some awesome vocals by Michael Kiske. It's dramatic. It has all the elements of, a Helloween epic, in my opinion, so it had to make the top 5. Coming in at number 5 here, we have the title track to Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2. Just killer stuff. Number 4 is going to go to Raining Blood by Slayer off the Rain and Blood record from 1986. This is the album where Slayer really became comfortable with their sound and started to churn out absolute thrash metal classics like the final track here on this record, Raining Blood. Amazing song, right? Obviously, it's a thrash metal essential, probably one of their best known tracks, but, that's neither here nor there. It's just a great thrash metal essential here, in my opinion, so it absolutely had to be on this list. Can't think of a better way to close out this record. Just awesome stuff. Love the vocals by Tom Araya as well. Right, really fast-paced, epic stuff on this song. And this whole album, again, fantastic. But Raining Blood, great way to close things out. Really apropos here on the Rain and Blood record. Fantastic thrash metal, all-time great track here, coming in at number 4 on the list. Top 3 now. For my number 3, I'm going to go with Eyes of a Stranger by Queensryche, off the Operation Mindcrime record, released in 1988. One of my all-time favorite albums. In my opinion, one of the best metal concept albums ever released. I've talked in length about how much I love Operation Mindcrime in the past. One of my all-time favorite records, so it had to be in the top 3 here. So, Eyes of a Stranger, great way to cap off this record. It's just a fantastic, dramatic song with killer vocals by Jeff Tate. It really does take everything that I love about this record and put it all into one track, so I think that's fantastic and kind of what you look for in what makes a great album closer, especially on a concept album like this one, And obviously, Queensryche's popularity would not last, right? They kind of fell off after the release of Empire, and really, struggled for many years with Jeff Tate really taking charge of the band and making a lot of their key decisions for many years, and just now, with Todd Latour on lead vocals, really starting to, come back and do some great career work that, had been absent, I think, from their catalog for a while, but there's no denying that early Queensryche was absolutely fantastic, and Operation Mindcrime is a great example of that. In my opinion, their best studio album, and Eyes of a Stranger, a classic track here to close things out. Awesome way to end things here on Operation Mindcrime. Eyes of a Stranger, my number 3, getting us started in the top 3 here today. Well, if you followed my channel before, you probably were seeing this coming at some point. Coming in at number 2, we have The Great Misconceptions of Me by W.A.S.P. off the Crimson Idol record. This is, bottom line, my favorite record of all time. Another concept album. I love a great concept album here, and this whole record is fantastic. Super underrated as well. Should have made W.A.S.P. superstars, but unfortunately became, pretty overlooked, I think, upon its release in 1992. But nonetheless, The Great Misconceptions of Me is an incredible album closer here. Really deep vocals by Blackie Lawless. Superb guitar work as well. Great drumming shared here on this record, recording with Sted Howland and Frankie Banali as well, respectively. So, great drumming here on this entire record, including The Great Misconceptions of Me. It's a W.A.S.P. classic. It's been a live staple as well, and I just love this song to death. Love the whole album to death, really, but it could not have paid off with a better track to close things out than The Great Misconceptions of Me, my number 2 on the list. Before I get to my number 1, I do have a handful of honorable mentions here. So that said, honorable mentions go out to When the Smoke Goes Down by the Scorpions, Aerials by System of a Down, Octavarium by Dream Theater, Third Eye by Tool, You Can't Stop Rock and Roll by Twisted Sister, and Blood of the Kings by Man of War. All awesome album closers, but I can only fit 20 on the list here today. And finally, for my number one here, you might have noticed there's been no Iron Maiden up to this point, and Maiden are my favorite band, so despite how difficult it was to just choose one from Iron Maiden because they have so many great album closers out there, I settled on Hallowed Be Thy Name off the Number of the Beast record. In my opinion, the greatest metal song of all time. It does not get any better than this on any studio album by any band. This is the greatest metal song ever written as far as I'm concerned. I love it to death. There's 9 tracks here on this record. Every song is, offers something different, right? Every song is a banger in my opinion, even though there are some that tend to be overlooked. But nonetheless, Hallowed Be Thy Name is the real gem on this record. The highlight for me, and also the highlight of just about every Iron Maiden concert as well, right? It's one of those songs that's even better live. It's one of those tracks that you wait all concert to hear. Just a great song here by Maiden. Bruce Dickinson taking the band to the next level in his first album with the group. Some great vocals here by a young Bruce. Also the guitar work, the bass by Steve Harris, the drumming by Clive Burr is fantastic as well. It's all fantastic and all makes for what is, in my opinion, again, the best metal song of all time, which just happens to close out Number of the Beast, which is why it's my number one on the list here today. But some other great Maiden album closers that, I took into account were Alexander the Great, right? To Tame a Land is fantastic as well. Empire of the Clouds. They have so many awesome album closers. Rime of the Ancient Mariner, how could I forget that one? But at the end of the day, I was limiting myself to one band because, like I said at the top of the video, if I didn't, it'd be like 80% Iron Maiden on this list, and I couldn't have that. I wanted to show a little bit more variety than just, doing Maiden after Maiden after Maiden. But nonetheless here, while it was very difficult to limit myself to one by Iron Maiden, it had to be Hallowed Be Thy Name from the Number of the Beast record, released in 1982. So that rounds up this list here of my top 20 favorite metal album closers of all time, which should be visible right over here. Again, just my personal opinion, but I want to hear from you down in the comment section below. Please let me know your favorite metal album closers of all time. Also, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the bell for notifications so you never miss a new upload. Please share this video around Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you guys have social media. It would be greatly appreciated. And until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.